Hey DCC, and welcome to another edition of Morning Coffee. I don't know about you, but when I think of the story of Jesus' birth and I think of it, I just always was, I guess for almost my whole life, I've always had this thought like, couldn't it have been bigger? I don't know about you, but I mean, I like to make things pretty epic. If we're going to do something, I want to go big or go home, right? And so if we're going to do a Christmas Eve service, I want it to be like Led Zeppelin meets Elvis with a little bit of Cash, maybe some Luther Perkins with Justin Timberlake and Chris Stapleton kind of sprinkled on top. I would love to see like an epic drum battle between, Mark Hubert and Jeff Mason, maybe a full 18-piece steel drum band coming in at the end. And while we're at it, why don't we have Greg Sermon actually do something like cure cancer or stop world hunger? I want it to be epically huge. I want it to be fantastic. So sometimes when I come to the story of the birth of Jesus, I stop and I pause. It's not how we would write a story, right? It isn't how we would write a story. Jesus is virtually homeless, right? Because his parents had to go and pay freaking taxes and take a census in this Roman oppressor like put on them, right? He's got them going to Bethlehem and he's got them filling out this census. Who starts a story with taxes? and if that's not enough, has to fill out some and register with some census, right? And okay, so he's homeless and his parents have to go back to their old stomping grounds, this Bethlehem, and do all these pedestrian things. But then his family doesn't show up, right? They don't come through. They don't give Joseph a bone, right? He doesn't have any place to stay. He's not going to be able to take care of his family. And then I don't know about you, but the birthing process is something that if I was God, I'd try to avoid at all costs, right? I have 5 daughters, and I'm just going to tell you, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure, it's not really a pretty picture. It's certainly not peaceful like a Christmas card, right? It's not Silent Night-ish. No, hell no. It's loud. It's violent. For the women, she doesn't have visions of sugar plums dancing in her head. She's more like plotting her husband's murder, right? And for the husband, while he's probably pretty glad that he's not going through the excruciating pain that his wife is going through, he's kind of struck with fear like never before. For your first child, you are seeing looks on your wife's face that you've never seen before. And it's not like looks where she's super happy like Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore in Ghost, where you guys are like making some pottery together. It's more like what he'd expect if he started a prison ministry that was dealing with serial killers. That's exactly the look that he gets for the first time. So why does God start this story as this small needy baby who doesn't have anything provided for him? Why not just appear like as this 33-year-old? And I don't know, like if it was me and I was writing this story, he's big, gigantic, huge, kind of like a Viking motif going on or something like that. He looks kind of like Thor or something. And maybe he looks more like his cousin, John the Baptist. At least he's out in the wilderness eating, locusts and honey. But, the story gets worse, right? Mary is faced with no one understanding or believing her. She's pregnant, and all these people think that she has some one-night stand with some guy that left her and who got her pregnant and then now is gone, right? And Joseph doesn't have any better. He's thought of as some chump who's that nice guy, right? That isn't the baby's father, but, he's going to be nice enough to marry her and take care of her, right? And so why does God choose this big, huge calamity that gives rise to Joseph and Mary and Jesus all being misunderstood? Why allow them all to be marginalized? Why allow them all to be maligned? And I'm going to tell you why, because that's who Jesus is about. Even in his conception, even in his birth, right? How Mary is misunderstood, how Mary is maligned, the gossip, the things that were being said about her, and later how Jesus is maligned, right? And how he's received. All of that, every ounce of it, testifies to who he is and who he came for. And we can conclude that even his birth, his being born, declares that Jesus understands the misunderstood. I don't have to ask you this question because I know the answer, right? Have you ever been misunderstood? Have you ever been marginalized? Have you ever had somebody, that looked at you and judged you? People don't understand why you act the way you do. They don't understand your story. They don't know your struggle. They can't look inside. They don't understand your silent inward pain from some of the things that you've gone through, right? But Jesus understands, and he understands those things that can't be understood by most people. In his birth, Jesus was left out. There was no room for him. There was no space. He was completely left out. So Jesus understands what it's like to be left outside. And the best part of this story is that way across the land, you have Bethlehem over here, way over there in Rome, way far away in this land far away, there's an emperor that's sitting on a throne who thinks that he controls everything, who thinks that he's in charge, who thinks and believes that he governs the whole known world. And then there's this ripple in time, and Jesus is born. And even though he's a baby, even though he's human, wise men from the east are already recognizing that there's a king, there's a new king in town, there's a new king on the scene. And as Jesus grows, his ripples get bigger and bigger, and the emperor is the last of his concerns. He's not worried about some human ruler. He's taking on the very enemy himself. He's taking on Satan. And he's defying him, and he's beating him, and he's healing people who've been oppressed by him. And he's then, at the culmination, at the pinnacle of Jesus' earthly life here, he fools Satan into killing him so that the ultimate battle could be won. He fools him, and the very time that Satan is probably fist pumping and going, yeah, I defeated him, I got victory, Jesus is actually the one mopping up the floor with him. Jesus is defeating death. Jesus is defeating the death of the world, and he's walking away victorious. That human infant, Jesus, maligned, marginalized, left out, powers through all that the enemy can throw at him and rises from the dead. And while it's not the story that we would write, right, in retrospect, if we admit it, if we look at it a little bit deeper, we realize that it's the greatest true story that's ever been told. There's a new king in town, that he's got work to do, that he's come to defend and rescue and save a world of misunderstood and marginalized people that have been oppressed by an enemy. And that's the Jesus that I serve, right? He's dripping with freaking awesome sauce. He's a mysterious, misunderstood gladiator filled with mystery and power. And he comes on the scene in this beautiful story. And that's who I want to choose to follow, right? That's the guy that I want to throw all of my effort behind. The person who understands me, understands my story, how I'm misunderstood, even when people around me, even when the culture around me, even when even those that are closest to me, that love me the most, don't understand me, I can go and follow a Savior who came here and understands what it's like to be misunderstood. So think about that today, and understand the Jesus that you serve, that you follow, and think about maybe how you can reflect that and try to understand and try to love and rescue other people. All right? Have a good day.